Lindsay Bishop from University College London. Now, slightly early, 18 minutes to 6. Here's Luke Tuddenham with the headlines.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Ooh.
Now, if you're a Metallica fan, those opening riffs of Fuel will need absolutely no introduction and may even have brought back some fun memories of years spent moshing to the band's music. Well, those of you who have spent any time at all in a mosh pit may be surprised to learn that heavy metal fans have in fact evolved to communicate with each other like remote tribes in Papua New Guinea. Well, we speak to Lindsay Bishop, who is an anthropology PhD student at UCL and was part of this research. She was laughing as soon as that music came on. And also Johnny Doom, who is a presenter on Kerrang Radio. So, Lindsay, first of all, many people go, how on earth can you equate a mosh pit with a remote tribe in Papua New Guinea?
It's a good question. Honestly, I'm a lifelong metal fan myself, so I've been familiar with mosh pits and the rules of etiquette since I was a teenager. And it was only when I became an anthropologist and I started learning some of the classic anthropological texts and looking into Papua New Guinea that I actually started to see more similarities with how people engaged with ritual performance there than similarities with, different types of genre in Britain as well, like pop music or whatever. There's this inherent hierarchy with who's on stage and who's in the audience, whereas heavy metal, it's a community. You come together to bond with the musicians and each other. It's more than just a spectacle. It's something really meaningful.
And Johnny, I want you to pick up, if you can, on what Lindsay said there about the mosh pit etiquette. I have to be honest, I don't regularly go to mosh pits, so I'm not aware of this, but I'm intrigued by it.
I'm going to be a little bit contentious here and say that the mosh pit actually didn't really start with heavy metal. It actually started with punk and hardcore music, which is a little bit different. It's a little bit different because obviously punk and hardcore music in the early 80s, especially in America, was lots of young kids who couldn't drink and wanted to go to these shows to watch these bands, who were all saying quite controversial and political things as well. So all these kids, as I said, especially in the American hardcore scene in the early 80s, were just full of energy, so they all went and watched bands like Bad Brains and Minor Threat and started to jump off stage and move in circles really fast, and that's where kind of mosh pits were born, really, and kind of heavy metal got it a bit later with bands like, I suppose, Slayer and Anthrax, when it all crossed over with punk. But yeah, that's kind of where the mosh pit comes from. And the etiquette, I'd definitely say, goes back to punk as well, because punk obviously had the ethics about looking after each other and equality and looking after people.
Well, explain how that works practically in a mosh pit. So if someone falls over, everyone goes over and picks them up?
Yeah.
It's kind of like tides of people being pushed against the front of the stage a lot of the time. But in the early 80s, you didn't have the health and safety you have now, and you didn't have the barriers. So it's a little bit more of an exchange going on between the band and the audience. And you could get up on stage with your favourite hardcore band or punk band and jump back off again. But yeah, if someone falls over or someone gets pushed over or moves with the huge tide of people that's going on, it's just about cooperation and making sure everyone's all right. I mean, it's not very nice trampling on someone's face anyway, is it really?
No, absolutely not. Lindsay, explain the similarities then between a mosh pit and some of these remote tribes in Papua New Guinea.
So I would say that it was never my claim that heavy metal invented these things. It is an evolution. I would say that Motorhead, I'd go further back to Motorhead being the crossover between punk and metal, and that's when it all really started with the new wave of British heavy metal. But no, I think what I'm more interested in not is the roots or origins of this behaviour, is just that how it's continued to evolve, how heavy metal has gone from this sort of singular sound to this insanely global, varied, subgenre-soaked genre that is now a community, that people talk to each other from different political backgrounds and from different races. And I think it's the fundamental relationship to the music, to the live performance, it's really what stands out. And that's what relates to the sort of Papua New Guinean aspect of it, in that it's a place where everyone's coming together. And when you bring in material culture as well, in the same way, it's not just mementos, it's not just something to display and show off. These things mean something to us. Or the T-shirts that we buy at these events, at these gigs, they stay with us for years beyond use. Just the same way, if you look at the sort of religious sort of use of material objects in these tribal communities, they're not seen as just displays. They seem to have their own kind of personality and their own agency, that we don't just project onto them.
And for you, Johnny, I mean, your first time in a mosh pit, is that quite a frightening as well as exhilarating experience?
Yeah, it's not always pleasant. There's a lot of fun to be had, a lot of adrenaline and sweating and nudging each other and jumping up and down to the music, but you can easily get like an elbow in the eye. And there's also been a new trend towards something called crowd killing, which is a specific breed of kind of moshing where you do kind of karate kicks, and actually, that's pretty dangerous. But for the most part, moshing is something that does bond you. You all kind of stick together and you're all in there together and you try and look out for each other as best you can, really.
Thank you ever so much for speaking to us, both of you. Johnny Doom, who is a presenter on Kerrang Radio, and also Lindsay Bishop, who's an anthropology PhD student at UCL and was part of that research. It's 5 Live. It is 10 to 6.
This is 5 Live Drive.